Welcome back. Just one track this time because it's long and important and complicated and awesome. Let's go. Let me tell you a story. It's about me. When I was young, I hardly ever listened to soundtracks, except while I was playing the games, of course. But the point is, I wouldn't have called soundtracks an interest of mine. When I was in my late teens, I guess about 18 or 19, I was browsing YouTube, which looked like this back then, and I stumbled across this video, a live performance of the main theme of Final Fantasy VII. I remembered how much I liked the game and the music, so I watched the video and I was spellbound. I mean, it was like an epiphany. Suddenly I was not only obsessed with soundtracks, I completely understood classical music. It was like someone turned on a light in my head, which showed me a room I had forgotten existed, full of interesting things and fun and exciting ideas. This video started a lifelong obsession with video game music, movie scores, and just orchestral music in general, and the process wasn't gradual at all. It happened in around 7 minutes. For this reason, the main theme of Final Fantasy VII will always be a special track to me. It's my favorite piece of video game music, and it's also the centerpiece of my favorite video game soundtrack. Many of the songs on the OST are in some way connected to the main theme, so if you are wondering why I would dedicate a whole episode to this track, well, those are the reasons. Wow, that was a long intro. We're already a couple minutes into the video, and I haven't talked about the music at all. So, why did this song hit me so hard? It wasn't just nostalgia. I mean, I could have heard an orchestral version of Honeybee Manor, and it probably wouldn't have had the same impact. Well, it's a long track, almost 7 minutes, and as opposed to most of the other tracks on the album, these 7 minutes are actually real. There's no artificially extended running time by repeating the track. It really is 7 minutes long. So I think it might help if we broke it down into sections. The first part is the intro, and it reintroduces the main motif to us, just to give us a reminder of what that melody sounds like, because even at this point, it is still not fully developed. The harmony is off and the complete melody doesn't come to fruition. Now, finally, we get the main melody of the game, fully developed with all the right harmonies. It starts soft and then gets louder and more bombastic as it goes on. I'm calling this part the interlude. I guess there are many different possible names for it. Anybody who's into songwriting might call this the bridge, but although many tracks by Uematsu follow traditional song structures, the main theme does not. Here the track calms down a bit, it becomes more playful. Uematsu focuses on different instruments like the piano and just plays around with the motif a bit. After the calmer intermission, the main theme comes back in full force. This is the climax of the song and I think it sounds really grand and epic. Coda might be an odd term to use, but I think this part is much too long and interesting to just be an outro. I really like this part. I think it often gets overshadowed by the one that comes right before it, you know, the really big main theme high point of the track. But this part is really cool in its own right. It's a bit more brooding and less focused on a strong, recognizable melody. This part is all about the atmosphere, and in the end we get a somewhat surprising second high point. Now, in many of the track-by-track videos so far, I mentioned that many songs are connected to the main theme, and I actually made a list. I hope I got them all. I think I missed one or two. I'm sure you'll point that out in the comments. I'm not gonna go into all of the instances of the melodies that appear in these tracks. Instead, let's take a look at how the main melody develops as we lead up to hearing the full theme for the first time in the game. First, I have to correct a mistake here. In episode 5, I said that the motif first appears in Underneath the Rotting Pizza, when in fact, we can hear the track On That Day 5 years ago, near the beginning of the game. Thanks for the comment by Lord of the Manor for pointing this out. So, the first time we hear the melody is in On That Day 5 years ago. Here we get almost the whole melody, but the harmonic accompaniment makes it sound flat and it lacks structure. In fact, it sounds a lot like the intro part from the main theme. Then in Underneath the Rotting Pizza we get the first half of the melody, and it's embedded in a rhythmic song with a lot going on. The motif takes a back seat. In Holding My Thoughts in My Heart, we're almost there. The melody is nearly complete and the harmony is much nicer and more fitting. And then finally we get the full melody in the main theme, complete with harmony and an epic orchestral arrangement. What we can see here is the journey of a melody, and as I mentioned in several videos before, this serves the purpose of introducing us to and familiarizing us with this melody. Of course, this motif is used in many different ways throughout the game, as we will discover as the series continues. But what is so great about this melody, this motif anyway? Let's take a closer look at it. I think the crux of it is this part right here. This jump. To me it represents the aspect of exploration and discovery. At the same time, the nice, smooth melody which comes before and after flows along nicely. The melody is at the same time simple and distinctive, which is important because it allows the tune to be used in many different ways and in many different tracks. Another cool thing about the melody is that it's used as a heroic theme throughout the game. Let me explain what I mean by that. In the Lord of the Rings movies, there's a part where the Fellowship is in great danger in the mines of Moria. They're about to fall from the ancient steps, but in the last moment they're able to escape to safety. And in that moment we get this music. Of course, Lord of the Rings is just an example. This happens in almost any adventure movie. And something similar happens in Final Fantasy VII when the party steals the tiny Bronco. Just when they lift off and escape, the motif plays. I mentioned before that Cloud is the only character that doesn't have a theme directly associated with him, and the main theme could be his theme, and I think it almost is, but not quite. You'll know why in the next episode. So, why is this track great? Well, to explain this, I'll have to take a step back and look at video game music in general. The reason that I often prefer video game music to movie scores is because in games the music oftentimes stands on its own without being connected, or as I would say, chained to certain images. In this way, video game music is a lot more similar to classical music like symphonies, for instance. They both have a beginning, a middle, and an end, a clear structure. The composer has a lot more freedom than in movies. For instance, in a movie, if the editor decides to cut an emotional scene right in the middle of an action set piece, the music has to change immediately. But in a video game, we get to decide when to do certain things. So the music has to be organic, and most of all, it has to be a constant companion on our journey. It can't just be epic or rousing or emotional or scary for a single moment. It has to convey these things constantly. Every single piece needs to keep you in a certain emotional state for its entire running time. This is especially difficult with such a long, complex and sweeping track like the main theme of Final Fantasy VII. But here, it works. This is a piece which is at the same time emotionally resonant and awe-inspiring. It's my favorite track in all of video game music, and I don't think that's gonna change anytime soon. And that was it for part 9. Thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for part 10.